Hello, my name is Aubrey. Welcome to my January wrap-up. Let's get right into it. I have 2 books from December that I'm going to slip onto this list. I'm going to go ahead and start with those. The first book I have to talk about is The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. I'm sure you all have heard of this. This is the prequel to The Hunger Games. With the hype of the new movie, I finally decided to read it. Some of you may remember me hauling this book in like my very first book haul ever. So I've had it for a while and I finally read it. The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes is quite a fascinating character study. We're following President Snow, his first name is Coriolanus, as he's helping to shape the Hunger Games. They weren't the sort of cultural phenomenon that we came to know in the actual Hunger Games trilogy. Most of the populace was kind of disgusted by the Hunger Games. It was very rudimentary. Nobody was really watching. Nobody really liked it. I guess you would technically call it a villain origin story. However, I feel where it differs is Coriolanus is not like a good person from the get-go who then becomes corrupted throughout the story. He's already, I'm not a psychologist. I can't diagnose people, but I would diagnose him with narcissism. He is already an incredibly narcissistic person from the very beginning of the story. He looks down on people. He thinks he's better than everyone else. He will say something really nice or polite to someone, and then in his head, he's like very rude and condescending. And he just very much feels like he is the main character, which, ironically, he is, but in terms of just feeling better than everyone, feeling smarter and worthier than everyone else, he's like that from the get-go. And so it's this interesting twisting of, okay, so what happens when you take someone who already has those narcissistic, self-centered qualities and you put them in a position of power and you allow them to make decisions for other people and you allow them to be in charge of the fate of someone's life. So in this prequel, this group of students is banding together and they're trying to improve the Hunger Games, and each one of them is assigned one of the tributes. And Coriolanus is assigned a girl from District 12. He develops this crush on her and he tries to help her win. But, even his affections for her are really narcissistic. It's all about what she can do for him. It's about possessing her, having control over her. It's very fascinating. That's how I would describe this, because I didn't particularly enjoy reading it because Coriolanus is such an unlikable character. Like, I definitely wouldn't consider this like an enjoyable, fun read, but it was kind of like watching a slow train wreck, right? Like, you just can't take your eyes off of it, and maybe you're not having fun, but you are totally captivated. I did definitely enjoy the character study. I liked the, more philosophical ideas that were thrown around, like nature versus nurture, what makes a person a bad person. I ended up giving it 4 stars. I definitely think it's not for everybody. Like I said, it's not a very enjoyable read. Our main character is very unlikable and not in a fun way. The pacing is a bit slow and honestly kind of all over the place. And of course, because it's a prequel, you kind of know where things are going. So I get the negative reviews. I understand why people maybe wouldn't like this. I liked it in terms of how much it made me think, how compelling the themes and the discussions were. And I get that that's not everybody's cup of tea. But if you're okay with reading something that's more about, the ideas and the questions it's asking, give it a try. The next book I have is Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross, and I'm not going to spend very much time on this. I read this last year in December. It was my very last read of the year, and it made my top 10 reads of 2023 list. So if you want to hear me going more in depth on it, you can watch that video because I gush about how much I loved it. So I'll link it down below if you want to check it out. But I'll just say I truly loved this. I love the characters. I love their romance. I think this is a very beautiful and romantic story. There's not a ton of world building in this one. All the fantasy world building elements are kind of, sprinkled into the background. That's not really what the first book is about. It's mostly about these 2 people coming together, falling in love. And I just found it really beautiful. I enjoyed it very much. I believe I rated it, did I give it 5 stars? I did. I gave it 5 stars. I really loved it. So yeah, Divine Rivals. If you like YA romance, like I couldn't possibly imagine how you wouldn't enjoy this. Okay, so now we're finally into the books I read in January, my official 2024 reads. The very first book that I read this year was Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree, the cozy fantasy book that started a whole trend. Going into this, I had very mixed expectations. Like, I love the idea of a cozy fantasy. I love the idea of an orc setting up a coffee shop in a world, you know, in a village that's never heard of coffee. The tagline is literally high fantasy, low stakes, and I was concerned that the low stakes wasn't gonna work for me. But I'm very happy to say that it did. I really ended up enjoying this. I found the beginning a bit slow, and I was worried that I wasn't going to be able to get into it, but eventually I did, and I really fell in love with it. I will say there's more plot than I thought there was going to be, so if you're worried about that, like, there is a story here. Ultimately, it is about found family. It's about finding simple pleasures in life. It's about starting over and deciding that it's never too late to be a different person and make new friends, find love. And it was just really cozy and really delightful, and I enjoyed it very much. I gave it 4 stars. I do think some parts of it were a little bit rushed, like the ending I think could have used a little more oomph, but overall I think Travis Baldree set out to do something here, and I think he succeeded. So yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I would recommend it if you haven't picked it up for yourself yet. And then of course my next read was Bookshops and Bone Dust, also by Travis Baldree. This is the prequel to Legends and Lattes. I might have enjoyed this one even more than Legends and Lattes. I think that's kind of an unpopular opinion, which I get. I feel like prequels are really tricky because you know how they end. But I liked it. First of all, it takes place in a bookstore, which is more, you know, my personal vibe than a coffee shop. I do enjoy coffee, but you know, bookstores all the way. I liked the characters more, like the side characters I felt like had a bit more bite to them, I guess. In this one, our main character Viv is injured from her mercenary troop, so she can't fight for a period of time while she heals, and she discovers this decrepit bookshop that's slowly going out of business. The bookshop owner, who is this, like, I think they're called ratkins, is this like small mouse-like creature who has a very foul mouth, like she curses a lot, and she gives Viv a recommendation for a book, and Viv goes home and reads it, and she really enjoys it, and so she decides to help rebuild this bookshop and kind of try to save the business. And there's this like skeleton man that they find that can like come in and out of a bag, and he's a really fun character, and I don't know, I really liked this one. I felt like there was a bit more of a plot going on. It didn't really bother me that it was a prequel and I knew how it was going to end. I was just enjoying my time with the characters, and I really like Viv, so I was enjoying spending more time with her and just kind of seeing like her progression, like where she started out at the very beginning of the story and like how she ended the story, and how that was sort of a precursor for her being more open to quitting the mercenary life. And I just really liked it. I also gave this one 4 stars. I hope we get some kind of sequel book so that we can bridge everything together. I really like this world, and I would be happy to read anything set in this world or following these characters. All right, and then I picked up A Study in Drowning by Ava Reed, and I think I was inspired to pick this up after Divine Rivals because it was like a rivals to lovers romance, and I was wanting something similar. And I have read one other book by Ava Reed, The Wolf and the Woodsman, which I really enjoyed, and I absolutely loved this. Now, I don't think this is for everyone, but it was definitely for me. It is a very creepy, gothic, just like bizarre, bizarre little book. We're following Effie. Yeah, we're following our main character, Effie, who is an architecture student, but her real love is literature. But they don't allow women into the literature program. Effie has been obsessed with this one famous author all her life, and after the author's death, she is given this opportunity to go and make new architectural plans at the author's manor, and they want to create like a tribute to him and his life. And so she goes, and there she meets another student from the college who is part of the literature program, and he's writing a paper on this author, and eventually Effie finds out that he actually thinks that this author is a fraud. That's kind of the plot, but it's also this like dark, murky, again, like kind of Gothic tale. Effie has struggled with visions of the Fairy King her whole life, and she takes pills to ward off visions that she has of things that are kind of supernatural or weird, and it's just really creepy. Like, it's an unsettling book. I felt unsettled the entire time I was reading it. I mean, ultimately, I really enjoyed it. Now, I do think some of the reveals are kind of obvious, especially to a modern reader. It's just not really about that. It's not really about the reveals. It's about the journey. It's about the characters. It's about overcoming the patriarchy. If you hate men and everything that they stand for, you will love this. I loved it. All right, and then after that, I guess I was looking for something that was also kind of dreamy and bizarre. So I picked up The Last Tale of the Flower Bride by Roshani Chokshi. How do I even talk about this book? This is the song 7 by Taylor Swift, but instead of moving to India forever, they're trying to be abducted by Fae. In this book, we have 2 points of view. First of all, we have the bridegroom, and I'm not sure he's given a name throughout the entire story, so it's kind of a Rebecca situation. And he meets Indigo Maxwell Castaneda. She is the heiress of a fortune and just a strange, mysterious woman who is obsessed with stories and myths and fairy tales. They fall in love and get married. Indigo insists that the bridegroom never look into her past. However, when her aunt falls ill, they have to go back to Indigo's childhood manor. Our bridegroom is trying his best to resist the allure of the secrets in this house, but the house itself is kind of, I don't know if you would call it sentient, but it has its own kind of personality and its own will, and the house is sort of drawing him into these secrets. He eventually discovers that Indigo had a best friend in childhood named Azure. Nobody really knows what happened to Azure, and so he's getting sucked into the allure of these secrets, but meanwhile, we're also following Azure in their childhood. So we're getting these, flashback chapters from Azure's point of view of the two of them as children and their best friendship. It's just so creepy. The whole thing is so creepy and mysterious. It's just this slow march towards something awful. And you can't look away. It's fascinating, it's dark. The friendship between Azure and Indigo, sort of teeters this line between being platonic and romantic. And it also, teeters this line between being genuine and lovely and also very toxic. Through the whole thing, we're not really sure if the magic is real in this world or if it's just the imagination of these two young girls. It's just brilliant. I loved getting Azure's chapters the most. That was definitely my favorite part of the book, and those don't come in for several chapters. We only start getting that point of view once Indigo and the bridegroom go back to the manor. But once those kicked in, I was full steam ahead with the story. I could not put it down. I did not want to stop reading. It was so good. This was a knockout 5 stars from me, like a knockout 5 stars. I don't know. I loved this book. I thought it was so good. I thought it was so dark and so creepy. It's also hazy and dreamy and atmospheric and bizarre in just all the ways that I love a story to be. The fact that this has a 3.7 on Goodreads is appalling to me. Offensive. I am offended. And I know Goodreads ratings are not everything, but at the same time, I don't understand that rating. 3.7 isn't that low, but it's too low for this. This is so good. This deserves at least an average of 4. At least, if not higher. 5 out of 5 stars. Just, yes. Everything about this. Yes. And then I read Ruthless Vows, the sequel to Divine Rivals and the concluding novel in the duology. It picks up right where the last book left off. I enjoyed it very much. I didn't enjoy it quite as much as I enjoyed the first one, but I did like it. I believe I gave it 4 or 4.5 stars on Goodreads. I can't quite put my finger on why I didn't love this one as much as I loved the first one. I think part of it is that our main characters do like get together at the end of Divine Rivals, and so a lot of the romantic tension was lost in book 2, and it focuses a lot more on the plot and the bigger war. And while I did find that enjoyable, I didn't find it as enjoyable as I found the initial romance in the first book. There are some things I would have changed. Perhaps one of our main characters loses their memory at the beginning of the story. I would have dragged that out a lot longer than Rebecca Ross did. That might be an unpopular opinion, I don't know, but I felt like it would have kept the romantic tension a little bit longer because they would have had to fall back in love again. I also feel like the gods in this world are a little bit too tame. They didn't feel scary enough. They didn't feel godlike enough. And I definitely think that could have been turned up a notch. I think some of the pacing was off as well because we're trying to balance this like lovely, sweet romance with this like bigger war plot. And so sometimes we would have scenes that felt very casual, like very normal, and it felt odd because there is this like bigger war going on and people were acting as though that just wasn't happening or that it wasn't a big deal. There were just a handful of things that sort of kept me from like loving it as much as I loved the first one, but I did still very much enjoy it. I think it wrapped everything up really well. I think it was still very entertaining. Like I wasn't, bored or anything. I do really love these characters, so I loved getting to spend more time with them. Now that I'm talking about it, I think a 4-star rating feels right for me. I didn't love it with my whole heart and soul like I did the first one, but I do still think it's worth reading. I still highly recommend this duology. All right, and the last book I have to talk about is a novella, a pretty famous novella. It is This Is How You Lose the Time War by Max Gladstone and Emil El Mohatar. What can I say about this? This is a deliciously written, wonderfully romantic, bizarre as hell little book. We're following 2 agents in a time war. They're like moving through time and they're messing with stuff and they're creating little ripples, making little tweaks and changes, all so that eventually one side or the other will come out victorious, whatever that means. And these 2 agents take notice of each other because they're both exceptionally good at what they do, and they start writing letters to each other. It's one of those books that you just have to go into being ready to be very confused, and you just have to sort of be along for the ride because nothing gets explained. Like, it's not like the world building ever makes any sense or anything ever feels very concrete. You will like this if you love beautiful writing, okay? If you are a fan of just like juicy, delicious prose, you will like this. Similarly, I think you will enjoy this if you just like romance, but like true romance, like someone just falling in love deeply and wanting to read gorgeous love letters. You will also like this. You will not like this if you don't like odd, unexplainable, dreamy, atmospheric world building. You won't like this if you need like concrete, solid explanations for stuff. This is not for you. I would say this novella is about 2 things and 2 things only. It's about the beautiful writing and it's about these 2 rival agents on either side of this time war falling in love. And you will get nothing else out of it. But that being said, those 2 things are delightful. So I gave this 4 stars. I really loved it. I wish I had known a little bit more of what to expect from it because like I've heard the premise a bunch of times, but I just didn't really know what I was getting into when I started this. And I was like, I am so lost and so confused. And I wasn't sure if I was supposed to be understanding all the little like aspects of how they're doing their jobs and changing the timeline. You're not. It's supposed to be just kind of weird and poetic and beautiful. And so I think once I sort of settled into that and like figured that out and I was like, okay, it's totally okay for me not to understand what's really going on. After that point, I really enjoyed it. So yes, This Is How You Lose a Time War, 4 stars, highly recommend. And that is it for my January wrap up. Thank you so much for watching. I will have all of these books linked down below if you want to check them out for yourself. Please let me know what your favorite read from January was. I would love to know. Like this video if you liked it and subscribe if you want to see more from me. I hope to see you next time. Bye!